Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second Act Actors. I'm your host, Dr. Janet McMordie, and I'm still a medical doctor. Oh my God, couldn't even pronounce doctor this morning. She's had a day, folks. I'm still a medical doctor, simultaneously trying to pursue a career in acting. There we go. My guest this week is one of my near and dear friends, Nadine Charleson. Now, funny story in regards to this episode. This is the second time we have recorded together. We recorded an episode of my podcast together, oh gosh, years ago, I think. Literally years ago. And then, I kid you not, 24 hours, not even, after we recorded, she messages me and goes, I just booked the biggest voiceover gig of my career. I can't talk about it because I am under non-disclosure agreements the size of the Bible, but can we please record the episode again when this awesome project gets released so I can talk about it? Absolutely, of course, 100% yes, because we love promoting the cool stuff that second act actors are doing. So I'm excited to say that we can now talk about the exciting project that she was part of. Hint, it rhymes with schmarshmores. You'll hear all about it in this episode. Anyways, Nadine is incredible. She's been an actor from the start, growing up out west, going to theater school. She's had a lot of careers in and around, and you'll hear all about it. If you liked my website, she is a website designer. She designed my website. Go take a look at it, janetmcmordie.com, shameless plug. She also has been the first AD on both of the films that I have made with my production company, and I would like to keep her in my film producing life and personal life, let's be honest, forever. She is an absolute treasure. She is my theater buddy. She will go to any live theater show that I kind of thrust upon her. She does stage combat. She does voiceover. She's an actor. She's incredibly talented and one of the kindest, most organized person on the planet. And you know I love my Excel spreadsheets, and she's the queen of them. Please enjoy one of my nearest and dearest friends, Nadine Charleson. Story. How did you get into this crazy business?
Oh gosh. I've wanted to be an actor since I was about 6 or 7 years old. I don't think I knew that it was acting though. My mom took me to see Les Mis, so I'm one of those theater nerds. And I just remember leaning over the balcony in awe and just completely like enraptured and taken away to a magical place. And I thought, I want to do that. My mother put me in dance lessons, and I was mainly a dancer doing a bit of musical theater all through my kind of like elementary school days. And then I wasn't doing very well in school, and so my parents moved like an hour and a half away to this special fine arts high school. And so I went there for high school, and that was like really game changing. And that was photography, art, like videography. I was a dance major. I did a year as in drama acting. But didn't have the guts to actually do it. So I went back to dance for my final year and then graduated and went to SFU, and I actually applied for their cinematography program and didn't get in, and my backup was dance. And so I did half my dance degree, 2 years in, they said, okay, you have to declare your major. And I couldn't bring myself to pull the plug and say dance. And I'd spent the whole time, so the dance studio and the theater studios were right next to each other, and so I was always like peeking in the window at the theater kids. And so I auditioned, got into the theater program, started my degree over again. My poor parents. Luckily, most of my credits transferred, but there was like an extra year. And so I got a degree in acting. Yeah, a degree, like a BFA in theater performance. And I also kind of did a year of playmaking and directing. So that was like me directing shows, small shows, and then like also helping other directors. And like, yeah, we did Black Box Theater, which is very similar to SNL. So you do a show every 2 weeks instead of every week, but we wrote, acted, directed, produced, like all of it every 2 weeks for 16 weeks. Yeah, so it was great. Yeah, and then I got out, graduated, and I've bounced around in front of the camera, behind the camera, taking breaks, getting back into it. And yeah, it's been 2 decades now since I graduated university, which is mind-boggling.
Oh God, I think about that a lot. Yeah, and it's when the emails come around like it's your reunion, you're like, what?
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
So SFU, obviously, out west. I'm an out west kid as well too. You're now in Toronto. What brought you to Toronto?
Well, my husband at the time, well, he's still my husband, but at the time we were in 2013 in Vancouver, and he decided he wanted to be a chef. So he joined Earl's and worked his way up. He was a sous chef, and then they were doing expansion into the US, and he applied, and he got part of the opening team. And so we moved to Miami, and then from Miami we moved to Chicago, and then Seattle. And then when his time at Earl's ended, it was a choice of, do we move to Vancouver? Do we move to Toronto? His family's here in London, so just a couple hours away. And I really liked Toronto every time I visited. And there was something about it. I think culturally, there's more culture here. Sorry, Vancouver. There's more like theater shows and just more stuff kind of going on. So it was the more exciting option. And we just kind of wanted a fresh start. We'd done it so many times at that point that like moving across the country again was kind of like, yeah, we've done it before. And so we did. That was 2017. And we've been here ever since. We love it. And yeah, my poor family back in Vancouver.
Hey, you know what? I'm with you. I literally empathize with you. As a Vancouverite down to my soul, it sometimes hurts me a little bit to be like, God, I love Toronto so much.
I know. And I love Vancouver too. And like we grew up really close to each other in North
did.
Vancouver, but we never crossed paths. But
Oh.
like, I have such fond memories and so much love for Vancouver. But it's like that you can't go home again.
Ooh,
and
yeah.
This is the place for me now. And like as much as I've tried going back, it's not the same.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful place to visit, as I like to say. It's
Love
a beautiful
visiting.
place to visit.
Yeah. Yeah. Spring, summer, amazing.
Yeah.
If you get a good season for snow, like some of the best skiing in the world.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
If you're a ski person in Canada, just move to Whistler.
Just
what are
go
you
there.
doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about when you, like after you graduated from SFU, and again, with your husband, you're moving to all these different cities, and then now Toronto, did you establish a career as an actor in these cities? Were you pursuing that, or what was going on? Kind of, how did you make the money that we have to make in capitalism?
No. So, okay, before we left for Miami, I had like a C or B tier agent in Vancouver. Was going out for stuff, and I had just had an audition for Once Upon a Time, which was that big ABC show that was, and it was like one of the evil stepsisters. I bombed the audition because I was so nervous. But, and then when we moved to Miami, I got an agent. But honestly, all they shoot in Miami is music videos. And like sexy hot chick. And 5'4", very average Caucasian brunette Nadine. Nothing there. And also to earn the money, I started working with my husband in the restaurant. So I was the office girl. So I did payroll, accounting, like all the admin things, and we were opening restaurants. So like we were opening a $5 to $8 million 800-seat restaurant in Miami. So we like didn't have a day off for 3 months straight. So much fun though. Like you're kind of just in it. It's like when you're making a film. It's like very similar that you're a brigade or you're a brigade for a kitchen. But I always equate it to being on a pirate ship. Like you're all part of the crew. You're all essential, and you're all just like battling the storm, trying to stay afloat and somehow make it. So I'm attracted to those things, I think.
Yeah.
In a strange way.
It's interesting. I was having this conversation, and again, this is a bit of an aside, but like you and I have now filmed 2 shorts together.
Yeah.
You've been the AD on 2 shorts that we've worked on, and it's such a weird fever dream, it feels like, when you're there. And I was saying this to someone, that it feels like you're walking through a weird theme park. And
Yeah.
because the stress is there, and very real stress. And I find it more stressful than like the medical work that I do, because I don't know what I'm doing in the film world.
And you don't have control.
You don't have control, but there's also a weird, like, all of this is fake because we're making something that's fake. So the stress is fake, right? Again, theme park, pirate ship, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the stress is real.
Yeah.
Because we're all real people trying to create something that it will exist, whether it's fake, like the acting part and all that stuff is contrived. What we're doing and showing up every day is creating something together. And there isn't a lot of control. So much of making art and making films is just luck, like, adapting to your limitations or your circumstances, figuring things out as you go. And there is a lot of that. You have to have a lot of like tenacious stick-to-itness that somehow it's going to work out.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, when you land in Toronto and you start to build the career that you have, how did you do that? Did you use tools that you had learned at SFU? Like, did that come from that? Or did you have to learn on the fly, kind of like what you were talking about, when we're in film, trying to learn on the fly and stick-to-itiveness?
I think there's certain like basics for actors. So like you get headshots, you have your resume, you have a demo reel, you go agent hunting. So I started there and didn't have any luck getting an agent in Toronto because it's super competitive.
Yeah.
I didn't have a great demo. And then I got into voiceover because 2017 I landed. 2019 I had an agent and said I was stepping back. Oh, my friend was actually my agent. My friend Simona Atias out of Vancouver was my agent. She's lovely. But I didn't really get anything. I had old headshots. Like, I just hadn't really done what you should do is like really properly like brand yourself, put together the material that you want to work on and present and put yourself out there in that capacity. So I hadn't really branded myself very well, didn't have great demos, wasn't really going out a lot, and was really out of love with the industry because back in 2017, this was kind of like pre-body positivity, beginning of Me Too. And I'd been in and out of the industry for, like, I go in and out because I have a real love-hate relationship with it. Like, it can be so wonderful and it can be so toxic.
Yeah.
So you really have to have a lot of self-worth and confidence in yourself outside of the industry, which I think I finally have figured out after, yeah. And so then I got into voiceover, and that was like game-changing. Like, voiceover is my jam. I love it. It's so much fun. It's just like amazing. You're not limited to any characters you can play based on your aesthetics. So you can really play such a way wider round. I'm going to re-say that. You can play a way wider variety of characters. And that's just really freeing and fun. Everyone I've met in the voiceover world is super supportive and awesome. I also am a gamer, and so I love playing video games. And it never occurred to me until 2019 that I could be an actor and a voiceover artist in video games. Like, that's just like idiot. Like, I've been playing, I still have my original Nintendo with the Duck Hunt gun. My husband and I still game. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy that I never even considered it. So yeah. And then, my friend recommended me for his agent, which was a small agency in Kelowna. They signed me because they were starting up, and I got a good amount of voiceover stuff through that. And then I booked Star Wars with them. So, non-union actor, tiny nobody agent out of Kelowna, booked a AAA game with Ubisoft. Yeah, so you don't have to have the best agent to book something like that. Which was surprising.
So tell me a bit about that Star Wars audition process. And again, loaded question. Why do you think you got this role? What was it about? And again, looking at it as, and I think like you and I have a very similar brain in this way, in like looking at it as like an observer above. Like, why did this tape work? So that's a question that gets asked all the time but what is it? And again, I will play, you sent me your audition, bless you. I will play your audition. What was it about that audition? Like, why did you get that role?
Well, let me listen to it, because I have not listened to it.
Yes.
In ages, so let's see.
Nothing here. Moving to the next sector. Clear! Nothing here! Moving to the next sector! Oh, I prefer the carbine we used in training. I mean, sure, you gave up range, but less recoil. I prefer the carbine we used in training. Sure, you gave up range, but less recoil. Oh, better get back. Better get back. Roger that. Roger that. We're under attack! We're under attack! Overheated! Overheated! We need backup! We need backup!
It's so interesting. It's so interesting listening back now. I've listened to it a couple times since I booked it and kind of tried to figure out, I'm like, why?
Right.
So having done a fair amount of voiceover training, and especially with Darcy Smith on vocal combat, so that's really going into like barks and onos. So for people who don't know, in video games, that's like the yelling or the extraneous sounds you make, like when you're climbing a wall, you're like, and you're making those funny sounds, or if you're yelling and screaming. So video games have a lot of really vocally strenuous things. Listening back to that audition, I think, so they get you to do two. So first of all, the audition comes through, for me at least, it came through a casting workbook, and it was under an alternate title. So it was called Project Eastwood. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that. We can black that out. It's out now. I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
So it was Project Eastwood, and I got like 3 auditions for a variety of different characters. One was soldier, one was pirate captain. I forget what the other one was. And this was in May of, oh God, I'm losing track of my time now. 2022? Yeah. So it was an audition. I read through it, did that tape that we just heard. One thing you always want to do in auditions is show range, so show options. So I think I did that fairly well in terms of like setting the tone for what was happening in the scene, so you can hear it. And sometimes it's just a soldier sitting around camp and nothing's going on. They're just like shooting the shit with their comrade. And then other times they're in combat or they're in a heightened state and they're like, but it's the same line, but you're telling a story and you're really bringing it to life. And that's what you have to do in voiceover. And then also, I think I showed the range of barks and onos. So that's being able to yell and project. They do that in the sessions as well. So it's like you go from regular speaking parts to slightly raised to yelled to screaming. And so you progress through that throughout the session so that you leave the most vocally strenuous stuff for last. And also because you can wear your voice out. So the sessions are only 2 hours. About an hour of that at least is just regular, starting to maybe get into some raised things, and then yelling and screaming, which I love. It's so fun. Like you're standing in this padded box, just letting loose. It's great. But you still have to focus and like, okay, so this is the scenario. This is who I'm talking to. What's happening in my imagination? Like they don't give you that. They don't show you any pictures. You get nothing. So it really is all your imagination.
And that's something that when I've talked to other voiceover actors, that is something that you all have in common, is this very vivid imagination, either from childhood or trained or both. Do you think, where do you lie on that? Have you always been a super vivid imaginatory person, or have you developed it over time?
I think I've always been like that.
Cool.
My mother tells me when I used to play like Lego Playmobil with her, this was even before Les Mis. So this was like pre-Les Mis. I loved Batman, like the 60s Batman, and I would reenact parts from the show with my dolls, and I would do it, she says, like pretty word accurate. So it was like, and then this character says this, and then this character says this, and this and this. And so she'd try and play with me, and she'd come in and be like, oh, that's Officer blah blah. I'm like, no, that's not the right line. And it's like, I was so controlling. So that's probably the director part of me that like has that thing in my head. And I've always had a really wild imagination. Yeah, I can really live in my head a lot and imagine things. And then I wonder if a bit of it was just like I held on to that, and it was part of my training, going to, you know, all these arts classes and then a fine arts high school and then going to the arts. Like, you do have a bit of that kind of in you. I think people can get it back. They can train it, but it's a muscle you have to work. Yeah.
How do you keep working at it?
That's a great question. I don't know that I do work at it anymore. It just kind of comes out doing training, honestly. I just did my first rapier wit drop-in class. And that was so interesting because it's so technical, and it's like that's very dance similar because you're remembering a series of choreographed movements, but then you're also telling a story and you're trying not to hurt your scene partner. It was also the story part that was so strong that me and my partner weren't great at, but seeing the other people, like what they did with story, was so impressive. I was like, oh, okay, you can have that much freedom and that may have that much imagination with it. I think it's a matter of just finding things that you find inspiring and fun and creative and doing them. Like, so often in adulthood, we just get stuck on the job, surviving, doing the grind, you know. Find something that you love. Like, the things that you loved that were fun when you were a kid are still fun. Like, go do them. Yeah.
Tell me what it was like, especially as a gamer, hearing yourself in Star Wars.
It's really surreal. I think I'm way harder on myself. So like it's great to hear. It's just like it's almost it's just surreal. I'm like, that's me. I think that's me. Because there's filters on it and stuff like that. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And then some lines I'm like, oh, I could have done that better. Like, oh, like hearing it now. You know, but like honestly, it was my first game, so such a learning experience. Yeah, it's such a dream come true. I think the moment that it really shocked me was when, so I booked it. So I auditioned in May, and they didn't contact us until January of the following year.
Wow.
So that's how long it took. And then they're like, oh, you're on hold for Eastwood. I'm like, okay, sweet. I would have been thrilled to be on hold for any game with one line, anything that they make. I was like, yes! And then they're like, okay, and then it got bumped to February, and like scheduling was just quite tricky. And then they're like, okay, finally, here you go. They have like very secure private download with all your name covered on things and blah, blah, blah. And so I opened the PDF, and first of all, it's 500 pages.
Oh.
And I honestly panicked a little bit. I was like, oh, shit. Like, okay. And then scroll down, and the first, part, roll Stormtrooper. And I just, I was like so happy and so panicked because now it's like even more pressure. Like, I would have, like, give me like the panhandler on the side of the street with 5 lines. Amazing. So there's a lot of pressure then to deliver and perform in that world. Like, and I myself watched the original series on VHS over and over in my childhood. I wouldn't consider myself like a Star Wars fan, but I'm a fan to that level. So and I'm a nerd, so like I really want to do justice to the world and the storytelling. So it was honestly, it was both emotions. It was like so happy and so terrified. And then after that, it was just fun. Like, honestly, every time I got to go in, it was just the best. Everyone who works there is so kind and wonderful, and dream, like absolute dream.
I love it so much. I have it. I'm waiting to play the game for the winter time when it's all crappy outside and my neighbors aren't around, so I can squeal when I hear you, because I'm so excited. I remember you telling me, I remember where we were like walking somewhere down in like the east end of Toronto, and I hear you telling me like, so
Yeah.
The first time we met each other in person.
Oh,
Anyway,
was it?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, man.
It's just like so epic. Just so epic. Like
So epic.
I'm just so
So
thrilled for you.
epic.
Like it's just, oh my God. And like I know how hard you work and how hard you train. And so it just thrills me to no end to hear the story of like someone who's worked hard and done the things and then got the things.
Yeah.
Like it's makes me so happy.
Which is so funny because I remember back in Vancouver when I was first starting out, early 20s, very green, just out of theater school, so like rose-colored glasses. I remember going to a casting director workshop with the top casting director there at the time. I forget her name. I still have the tape somewhere. We each got, I think, 5 minutes with her just to ask her questions. And my question was, how do actors get lucky? And she looked at me and she was like, I don't believe in luck. And I just didn't understand. And she's like, luck is when hard work and opportunity meet. So it's like you train and you're ready for the thing that arrives. This is me paraphrasing now, but she said, yeah, luck is when hard work and opportunity meet. So if you put in the work, eventually the thing will come along and you'll be ready to do it. So like if I hadn't done training with Darcy for video games, if I hadn't done, I did a bunch of stuff with closing credits and with Kim Hurden casting. I really started listening to video games in a different way. I went down like every rabbit hole you possibly could. Like I really immersed myself in it. And then this audition came up and did well enough that they booked me for it. But it wouldn't have happened. Like that opportunity wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been ready to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I like that. Has there been anything that has been surprising to you in this industry, especially as we gain great wiseness and maturity in this life?
I really struggled with my weight when I was in my 20s. And not in a big way. Just like I was pretty average. And most actors in Hollywood are super tiny skinny. And I remember going to my agent and kind of, asking what I needed to do. And he really didn't want to tell me. And basically it came down, he's like, you need to lose like 20 pounds. Because you're not big enough to be the funny fat best friend. And you're not skinny enough to be the best friend of the lead. Right. It was like this really muddy area. I was just normal. And that made me, and instead of firing me up and making my own content or losing the weight and getting into whatever or getting really funny and embracing that, like I think I just shut down. And that's one of my regrets, is that I did that instead of being the pioneer of all the amazing body positivity stuff we've seen. Like we've seen so much progress now. I think that's what finally, when we moved back to Toronto, I was like a bit inspired again, and I fell in love with the industry again because there was more potential, and it was, the stories were more interesting and more real, and so I was like, I'm gonna swear, fuck yeah. Like that's an industry I can be proud to be a part of and work in. I think that's a big part of why I like our work, is like, we do a lot of non-binary stories that don't get told, and that's amazing. And like, we need more of that, because so much of Hollywood is just the tropes and the stereotypes that have just carried on for millennia. So in my 20s, I was like, what can I do? Nothing. And then in my 30s, I was like, oh, you can be the change. So
do you think, and it's probably, I'm answering my own question, probably a combination of the two. Because one, I think it's probably a combination of the times they are changing, hallelujah, but also two, and let me know your thoughts on this. I've been told, like, Vancouver is the LA of Canada, Toronto is the New York of Canada. So like LA, where it's sunny all the time and everyone's beautiful and tanned, Vancouver. Toronto is grimy and decrepit and cold and HBO. We are Detroit. Like we are, so we film different things here, and there's different aesthetics here compared to LA and Vancouver. So there'd be a different group of characters that they're looking for compared to LA and Vancouver. What are your thoughts?
100%. And that is one of the big reasons I wanted to move to Toronto instead of Vancouver. I'm not a hallmarky, CW 5'8" model.
Yeah.
There's a lot of actors that I call models who move. And they're really pretty to look at. They're not great in terms of the acting chops, but they get a lot of work because they're pretty to look at. And that's just part of our natural human biology. We're attracted to pretty things. I get it. But that's just not me. And it's not what I'm interested in doing. So I love HBO. I love all those kinds of gritty shows. So I'd way rather work in those. Yeah. So for me, Toronto's been great because it's just way more my vibe.
Totally. I was trying to think if I wanted to go off that. I don't think I do. But it reminded me of a funny term that I'd heard called a model, actor, whatever.
I've not heard that, but that's great. It's a ma.
It's a ma.
Yeah.
It's a model. I'm an actor. Whatever.
And I'm not saying that people who don't start out as models can't, train and become better actors. It's just a lot. And also in the industry, a lot of people get their 15 minutes, right? And that is part of the norm now. There's so much content. There's we don't really see these like huge prolific stars in the same way. It's more balanced and like divvied up a bit more, which I think is actually good. I think it's probably good for all of us. Just in terms of, hopefully people don't have crazy egos. Everyone I've met has been lovely for the most part. I've met a couple people who were, and they don't work much anymore.
Exactly.
And so there's something to it. Just be a good human. Just be a good human.
What?
Don't be a jerk. Don't hold up set because it's $500 a minute. Like, it's $500 a minute. So if you're going to go and have a 15-minute powwow with the director because you didn't do your lines, not good. Not good. Be a professional. Be a professional. Learn your lines. Yeah.
So in Canada, it's really difficult to be a full-time actor. What do you do to round out the fact that we need to buy food in this country and put a roof over our head? What do you do?
I've always had a day job. What did I hear recently on a podcast? I listened to the Script Notes podcast, which is so great as well.
It's so great.
And they talked about survival jobs, and that we should stop calling them survival jobs and we should start calling them thrival jobs. Because they are what allow us to do the thing that we love. And I really agree with that. And even when I was growing up in acting, like training and everything like that, you're always told to make sure you're living a full life, that you're not just an actor, you do many, many things. I've always had a day job. Usually it's office work. I now work at a software company doing admin, and then I build websites on the side. And I started doing that in the pandemic because my husband got laid off. We had no money. I really wanted to train because I was getting really depressed. And so I was like, well, I've got this skill I'm kind of okay at. Let's see if people will give me money for it. And people will give me money for it. And I kept doing it. And you keep getting better. And so I look at stuff that I designed, 3 years ago now, and I cringe. But I think that's true of all work, and especially of creative work. Anything you start you've never done before, you're not going to be good at. So the question is, what are you willing to go through being bad at in order to become good? Those are the people who become good. I remember in theater school, there was a person, I'm going to try and keep it very gender neutral. There was a person who was not good. They were the worst person in our group of like 14 in the program, in our year. They weren't very good. They just weren't. And there was another person who just naturally had so much charisma. Like, you just wanted to watch them. They were great. This was year 1. And by the end of year 4, we were doing main stage, and the person who wasn't very good had trained so much that they nailed it. They were great to watch. They went after all their characters' objectives, yada, yada, yada. And the person who just had the charisma never really put in the work. Didn't really, like, they're watchable, but they're not really like the character, and they weren't putting in as good work. Person who wasn't as good an actor surpassed the person with natural chemistry. 10% talent, 90% hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice on people who are interested in, again, becoming that person by year 4, like wanting to get into this industry later in life, worried that the bus has left, the train has left the station? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I would say you have to do it and get out of your comfort zone, because we learn by doing. So don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to suck. It's not failing, it's learning. You are learning what to do and what not to do. And every time you stumble and fail or whatever, you're learning that didn't work. Cool. Try the next thing. You really do have to do it, though. It's like anything in life. If you want to get in shape, you have to go to the gym. If you want to play guitar, you got to sit down, have your fingers get really sore, play those scales over and over again, and suck before you're good. That's true of anyone. I don't think Beyonce was an amazing singer when she first started singing, right? But you put in the work, you put in the training, and you can become good at anything. You just have to be specific and dedicated and, do it.
It's so tricky because there are so many examples of people who are naturally gifted, or people think that because acting is quote unquote just being a human. Like, it's easy. Anyone can do it. What do you mean you have to train to be an actor? You're just standing there reading lines, being what you normally would be. It's so different than, like, I'm not naturally a doctor. Like, I have to go and I have to learn the science of medicine. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And, like, how do you, like, what kind of training do you recommend? Or, like, what do you recommend to kind of get out of that mentality of, like, this is just a thing that everyone can do?
It's not a thing that just everyone can do. Or correction, it's not a thing that everyone does. I think if anyone went to an acting class for 6 months, they would start to get the skills to do exactly what you said. Like, you're just reading lines, you're just being yourself, you're just blah, blah, blah. But that is really hard to do on camera, under pressure, trying to feel things that aren't of your world and pretending and, like, living that imagined reality truthfully. That is something you can train. It's not as, it's not the same as being a doctor, but it's similar in terms of, like, you have to learn and go and do the thing.
Yeah. What classes have you found the most helpful for that? Are there certain ones in particular?
I think you have to follow your passion. So you have to follow whatever you are excited about. And that's the tricky thing as an actor, is there's not just one book. This is the way to do it. This will work for everyone. We're all unique butterflies. We're all unique snowflakes. And what works for me isn't going to work for someone else. But that's part of the process. That's part of the journey. That's part of the, like, figuring it out. So figure out what does work and what doesn't. A lot of the ways that I memorize lines, other actors hate. But for me, it works. So, like, for me, I record it into my memo. I talk along with it, and then I get it to a point where it's half decent. I start writing it out, like, manually by hand, and then I go back and correct the words that I get wrong, so I can kind of start to understand where their thought process and the words they choose is slightly different than my own. So, like, I'll choose to say amazing and they say excellent. It's just a small, like, thought process change. So I note those changes, and then I go through and do I don't know what it's called, but you put the first word of every letter on the side of the script. It's like a little kind of mini cheat sheet. That's what Pedro Pascal and oh god, what's her name? Sarah Paulson? I'm sure a lot of other actors do it. It's kind of like a cheat sheet, and you just, like, cover the side of your script and you cue yourself with that, and that's how you, like, eventually put a script into your brain. A lot of actors hate that. They can't listen to themselves on tape. It's distracting. It takes them out because they're like, that's what my voice sounds like. No, it's not. That's a bad recording. Like, I forget what we were talking about.
It's just, like, classes and ways to train. And I love that.
Read,
like, it's so
read
practical.
all the books, though. But also read all the books. Like, like, there are so many classic books out there that, as an actor, you should have just read. That I have not read all of. So do what I say, not what I do. But like, there's an actor prepares, there's, books by Mamet and Stella Adler and like all those greats out of New York that really created the founding bedrock of what we consider naturalistic acting now. Go become, a student of acting history. Like that will just teach you so much about how the craft has changed, what the styles are now, and then go get in a class. Find a class where you've got a great supportive teacher, you gel with the people who are in it, and find one where you're either the worst or the middle actor. So you can watch people who are better than you. And then once you're the top of the class, it's time for you to go find another pool to swim in where you're not as comfortable and you can do that.
I love that.
And find your people. You got to have like a really supportive network of people because it's a tough industry. It's a lot of rejection. You just have to learn to let it go. Like you really got to be the stone in water or whatever it is. Like submit an audition, forget it. Do a callback, forget it. Like just enjoy the process, enjoy the moment, move on. Yeah.
Do you have anything that you are looking forward to coming up?
In terms of like acting gigs or
anything.
I'm excited to not be busy.
What does that mean?
I know. I tend to
make ourselves busy.
We will. I make myself busy. I take on way too many things.
Yep.
I'm really excited for mocap vaults. So that's coming up soon. So that, for people who don't know, is a training studio out of LA, Toronto, LA, Toronto, London. I think they also have a couple places in Atlanta, maybe now, Houston. Cool. They do pop-ups in New York. But they do motion capture training for film and TV. So if you want to do, crazy character creatures, or if you want to do video game mocap acting, highly recommended. But I've been going through their program and I'm really excited that we're doing cinematics soon, which is
fun. That's great.
I'm also doing dialect training. So that's, if anyone wants to voice characters in video games, go learn dialects. Like that, I can't tell you how many auditions I've had from Ubisoft this year that were RP British, Irish, Scottish, Norwegian, Swedish, like anything but North American. More than half of my auditions for them are some kind of dialect. Wow. And so if you want to play video game characters, it's really helpful because then in a 2-hour session, you can play 5 characters. So that's great bang for the buck for them. You get to play more roles and they'll bring you back.
Do you have a recommended dialect coach or places that you've gone that you enjoyed?
Someone that you work with who does well. I'm working with Elisa Simpson out of New York, and she works with Eric Fournier, I want to say, of YouTube fame. So he's like the guy who breaks down all the dialects on YouTube. Yeah. But he's very expensive, as he should be. She's wonderful. I've learned more in 2 sessions with her than I've learned from any I actually have a dialect book, like the Paul, what's his name? There's a very famous large Bible of dialects. I've learned more from her in 2 sessions than I have reading the whole thing.
Wow.
Just in terms of like placement and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I'm very excited about that. Because learning to speak with an RP accent is quite difficult. And you do have to move your mouth in a very different way. And it's awkward to do as well because you have to change specific words that you use. Anyway, it's a whole other thing.
Sounds so cool.
It's, yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so cool. So cool. Do you have any favorite memories from like times on set, on stage, in the booth, funny stories?
My favorite memory so far was my last session with Ubisoft because I got to do alien voices. So I got to do Pike and Hatice and a bunch of stuff like that. So that was surreal and so cool. I'm a huge nerd. I just want to speak weird alien languages. On Duolingo, I'm learning High Valyrian for no reason. I think that's probably why I love voice acting. Like, it's so much fun. There's always something new to learn. But those are great. Those are really fun. Those are really fun. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Do you have any final words of wisdom or advice?
My advice is just to, whatever you keep thinking about doing but not doing, go do that thing. Yeah. There's a reason why you keep thinking about it. And like being scared of that is good. I love the book The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield because he talks about that, like resistance and fear. Like, you wouldn't feel fear or resistance to something if you didn't care about it. And you obviously care about it, so you should go do it. Otherwise, you'd feel nothing for it, and you'd be like, oh, whatever. You wouldn't feel fear and resistance. So fear and resistance is a way of your psyche or the universe or whatever you want to call it pointing you in a direction. You just have to be brave enough to overcome the fear. There's nothing there. You can fall on your face. You can you can absolutely bomb your ABC Once Upon a Time audition and still have a career. It's fine. Go fail hard and you will achieve great things.
Thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you Nadine for being my guest this week. I absolutely treasure our friendship. I adore you. I would like to keep you in my life forever. I love working with you on projects. Your organization makes my brain tingle. I love the way you think. I love going to theater with you. You are fabulous. I cannot wait to play the video game that your voice is in and shriek ridiculously the first time I hear that stormtrooper of yours. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you will all tune in next week for another episode of Second Act Actors. Bye!